How is the sound now? Right, I hope the sound is fine now. And I'm gonna start, since I see that 34 people have joined already, and I'm eager to start giving you value, the value that you came to receive. Right. A few words about me. I've been in cybersecurity for, I don't know, probably the last 15 years. And I've been a speaker at the largest security conferences in Russia, and 3 times in a row with 2 to 4 hour master classes at the conference PH Days, and other conferences as well. And I've been in the Microsoft security consulting team. Then I joined as a consultant the UAE Nuclear Energy Corporation. And then I opened Atlant Security around 3 years ago. Yeah, great. I'm happy that the sound is good, finally. Great. Right. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter, but I rarely tweet. So LinkedIn is the place to be if you like security content and if you like my content. Right. Now, real life attack scenarios. I'm going to cover one major incident. I think many security vendors like this incident and like to talk about it. I like it because of its impact and because of its clear timeline. And we could speak about prevention of modern incidents in cloud systems. However, I think 99% of all of you today work in an infrastructure which has Active Directory as its core. So I'm going to talk about securing Active Directory mostly. And then if you have questions about preventing ransomware in cloud environments, I can answer them if we have time. Now, my favorite slide of the whole presentation, the whole webinar. Please take a good look at this slide, because this slide has been with me for years and years, and I've been showing it to so many people everywhere I worked at. It's a very old slide taken from a New Zealand security conference. I think it's open source, that's why I'm using it. It's available on GitHub, on their GitHub. And basically, hackers don't give a shit what you have in your network. They are like water. They find a way through the smallest cracks, and they don't care if you have the budget, if you have the team, or if you have legacy systems. They just don't care. So now, if we look at the generic security incident, which what a ransomware event actually is, you will see that normally the timeline goes as a normal, hackers have projects. They have project managers, they have organized groups, and they have like Kanban boards, and they have monthly objectives and KPIs, just like all of us. And they do their research, and their research follows very strict rules and is very structured and very organized as well. A hacker's research process is not much different from the process of investigating cybercrime. And their process looks at your people and your technologies. They might look at your job offers to see what kind of technologies they use. And the research is so rigorous that usually they find the vulnerabilities in your technologies better than you know them yourself, because you're busy with all kinds of tasks that your boss gives you, and the hacker is only looking for vulnerabilities in your organization for a while, for sometimes for months or even years, depending on the payback. And as you can see on that slide, the time it takes between the initial breach and the foothold achieved, between the attack and the foothold, is around 2 weeks. Then it takes between 5 minutes and a day to become admin in your organization. And becoming admin on one workstation often becomes the same as becoming admin on a domain, on a whole domain level. And I'll explain later why. And usually they stay undetected for months. Sometimes they stay undetected forever, not for years, forever. And the average time is 4 months. And you know that the average usually means between 0 and infinity. So an average of 4 months basically means nothing. They can stay forever in your network if you don't detect them. And yeah, what happens when we prepare for a ransomware event? Well, usually most companies trust a vendor. They trust a security vendor, and they buy some kind of fancy EDR or fancy security solution on the blockchain and next gen or whatever someone convinced them to buy. And the result is usually this one. So the result is we see all these major breaches happening. And don't you think that all of these companies on the screen, on your screen, had an antivirus or an EDR or a security monitoring solution? And all of them had security teams, and all of them got hacked. Why? Because you will see in the majority of organizations, I would say more than 90% of organizations, you see someone buying security solutions, but you don't see people doing security architecture correctly. You don't see people doing security hardening right. And today's webinar is all about security architecture. It's all about security hardening. So now you see at this, if you look at this ransomware attack that happened against a network of hospitals and shut down multiple hospitals, I chose this because it's a great example of a ransomware attack. And please focus on where the attack happened. I hope that you see the screen well. I think it's if you maximize your screen, you will see all the text. And if you see that from initial foothold, when the attacker gained some kind of execution on a single workstation in a single hospital, it took them just a few days to gain persistence, which means when you reboot the workstation, the hacker will still be there. And then they stayed for several weeks. I think it was 8 weeks or something before they deployed, actually for several months before they deployed the ransomware tool. And if you look at the timeline, you will see that the hacker moved from hospital to hospital, from network to network. They gained administrative access in the whole enterprise network across several domains, across several Active Directory domains. And just when they were detected, and they knew they were detected because obviously they are monitoring. Someone can see the presentation. That's that's interesting because can you see the presentation now? Does anyone else have issues with the presentation? Do you see the presentation now? Can someone please give me some feedback about the slide? Because that slide is really important. All right, I don't see feedback yet, but I'm hoping, I sincerely hope that the slides are visible. I'm gonna wait just a few more seconds because there is a slight delay. All right, all good. All right, thank you guys. Right, we'll go with whatever is showing because the content is important. All right, some people can see, all right, I'm moving forward because we have a lot of content. The important thing here is that ransomware is not the security incident. Please remember that. Ransomware is not the security incident. Ransomware is just the point when the hacker wants to do two things. Profit, one of them is profit, and the other is hiding their tracks. Because if they encrypt all your computers in the whole organization, you cannot recover evidence and you cannot recover your data because encryption is very solid. Encryption is like math. You can trust encryption just as you can trust math. And before the incident, they usually see all your internal communications. They see if they are, the hackers can see if you are investigating the breach. And the moment the investigation starts, they have a very short period of time of opportunity because before they are kicked out. And that's usually the moment when they do the ransomware. Before the ransomware event, they take all your data, they download all your data so that they could extort you with your data if you decide not to pay. So the ransomware event is not the security incident. The ransomware event is a symptom of the sickness. It's not the sickness itself. And so ransomware is not a virus. It's not a kind of malware. Ransomware is a group of people. So think of ransomware as a team. So you're not fighting a technology. You're not fighting a malware. You are fighting a team of hackers inside your network who decided to use ransomware for one reason or another. So how do you fight them? First, of course, please have backups. But remember, those people are in your network for months. And if they've been in your network for months, then you can't really rely on your backups because the hackers have the same rights as your domain admins in most cases. And if they have the same administrative rights, and they have the knowledge to disable your backups or corrupt your backups in such a way that you couldn't rely on your backups. If you can rely on your backups, all their work for months is to waste because you can just restore and not pay them anything. So work hard on your backups. Data diodes, you can do them yourself. You can build them yourself. It's a one-way data flow, which cannot be the hackers cannot delete data because they cannot enter the backup storage because there is data diode. You can buy them, you can build them yourself. The hardware is not that expensive. And I'm not going to focus on backups because this webinar is about prevention. And backups, your disaster recovery plan is something that you should have worked for months to get it right. Now, you should work on training your people. You should work on building your processes. But this webinar is about technology and about technological defenses that you can take today to take care of the ransomware problem. Actually, of the security incident problem which precedes the ransomware. And my belief, my values in cybersecurity is that you should work with your hands first before you start buying security solutions. Because if you don't understand the underlying idea, then you should, and you start buying security products, you will end up with a lot of flashing lights and not much functionality, because configuring a security product can sometimes take a year, and depending on the size of the organization and depending on the complexity of that product. But DLP solutions, SIEM solutions, security monitoring, threat hunting solutions, they take months to configure properly, and they never are completely configured. You have to tune them daily. And if you don't know how, and the only way to know how is to know your underlying principles of secure architecture. Now, yeah, and you need to learn to walk before you can run. Now, another core value of this webinar is that 20% of the effort should bring 80% of the value. And then 80% of the effort usually brings 20% of the value. That's the Pareto principle. It's mathematically proven. It's just the way things work in our universe, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. It's how our entire universe works. And the Pareto principle is an amazing book. Get it on Amazon. You'll love it. To answer Farouk's question, yes, there will be a recording. I don't know where I'll publish it, but it will be published. And I don't know if it's going to be publicly accessible or just for certain people, but I haven't decided yet. But yeah, there will be a recording. Now, I'm going to show you which 20% of the effort to do to get 80% of the benefits. And that's defending the patient zero workstation. If you don't defend the patient zero workstation, unfortunately, you will fail. And any security product which doesn't solve this problem will not solve the security incident problem. So let's focus on the workstation, on patient zero workstation, because if they cannot get a hold in your network, well, they'll choose an easier target. That's just how it is. Become a difficult target. There is an amazing tool that you can Google on GitHub. It's on GitHub. It's available on GitHub. It's free of charge. It's open source. The source code is available on GitHub as well, if you're concerned about running open source tools in your environment. And that's a quick and dirty solution, like the quickest and dirtiest solution that you can have about hardening an endpoint. And one thing to remember about this screenshot here is to be careful about disabling PowerShell, because if you disable PowerShell and you need PowerShell, especially on your own workstation, then, well, you'll have to re-enable it. But that's the quickest thing you can run on an endpoint to secure it, because it protects, it disables the Windows scripting host, it protects your Office, protects Adobe, which is a frequent vector of attack. So Office and Adobe Reader gets so many vulnerabilities, and Adobe Reader gets a new vulnerability every week. It's incredible how this software can have new vulnerabilities every week for years and years and years. It's just mind-boggling. And showing file extensions is critical, because hackers send binaries, and then they change the icon to a document, and people click. Some people are MCDC, Microsoft Certified Double Clickers, and they just click and click and click, and they open everything that people send them. Regardless of how many security awareness trainings you show them, they will keep clicking on everything that hackers send them. So you have to prevent that. You have to remember that people will open shit, and you have to harden your endpoints. And we need to go deeper than this tool, because this tool is just for really, really small organizations. Probably for your home computer, you can use that tool for your home PC, for your child's computer for school, for example. Now, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share with you a security hardening script that I've built I stepped on the shoulders of giants, of course. I used existing scripts out there, and I made around several hundred changes to this script before I could call it my own. And you could see, in the history of this file, hundreds and hundreds of edits until I could say that this hardening script is good enough for use by organizations, by me, for my clients. And I'm going to share my screen now. Give me just a sec. So yeah, because I need to zoom in a little bit and share screen. Right. So here it is. So you should be able to see my screen. And I'm going to zoom in even more because I want to talk about what your defenses against ransomware should be compared to a product. And you will see in just a few seconds, you will see. First, it does a computer restore backup, and then a system restore to make a backup of your registry, so you could restore in case the script breaks something. Now, keep in mind that this script is 955 lines, and it's extensive. It has hundreds of security settings. It has dozens of settings in Windows Defender, and so on and so on. But I'm going to show you not line by line, but let's say idea by idea what this script does. So first of all, you need to make sure that the hacker, when he is in the network, let's say they are on the patient zero machine, they cannot move across the network and install backdoors and malware on other machines. So here is, and you have to read this script. I'm going to share it later with you. Read this script. Don't just run it. Read it, please, because every line, there are commented lines like this one, which says this command should be run manually, and then you run everything else. Like this command here prevents remote installation of services and remote execution of tsexec and stuff like that. So this command is crucial. It's important. And then you associate all kinds of executable content with Notepad. So people who double click on everything wouldn't click on everything. And when they double click on everything, because they're just a regular user, they will open the file in Notepad and it will not execute. So that's critical, associating bat files, JavaScript files, Visual Basic files, all kinds of like ISO files. Hackers send ISO files to users because it mounts the file as a folder, and then they can, and the ISO file, you cannot delete malware from it because it's a read-only file system. So this shouldn't be allowed for users to open ISO files by just double clicking. They should know how to open an ISO file properly, right click, mount, whatever. And first, you take care of that. You take care of users clicking things. And then you take care of, let's see, all kinds of security settings like protecting your LSA, protecting Windows Defender. Here, it's Forces Defender. And why I'm saying Defender? Well, there are there are 65 antivirus vendors on VirusTotal. There are dozens of vendors that people know. And why I would recommend Defender? Well, Microsoft has 1 billion workstations, and they have threat intel from across the globe. No other security vendor on the planet has as much threat intelligence as Microsoft. So if you want to have to use the largest threat intelligence database in the world, then use Defender. But don't just blindly use Defender, because you have to configure it, and that's what this script does. And I'll show you what it does here. So it enables protection against potentially unwanted applications. It enables attack surface reduction rules. So this script enables attack surface reduction rules, enables early launch, adds protection for Office applications from injecting code in other processes. And you can see the settings on your screen. This is just Office, email, all kinds of settings of Defender for, against Office vector of attacks. Attacks coming from Microsoft Office, and then unsigned, like preventing execution from unsigned USB, from USB drives if the content is unsigned and untrusted, and so on. And those settings, many of them are not available in the user interface. You can only enable them through the command line or through PowerShell. And one of the most important features here is that the process mitigation, if you've used Emmet, years ago, Emmet was a famous program to prevent exploits. Now it's integrated into Defender. So this here imports the XML to configure all kinds of exploit prevention settings. And then the script takes care of various versions of Office, including 365, disabling macros, executable content, and so on. And you can see that hardening a workstation is not just hardening the operating system. You have to harden the operating system itself. You have to harden Office. You have to harden Adobe. You have to harden your Defender. All kinds of components in the operating system, because the ways to get into a machine are numerous, and you have to take care of all those numerous ways to compromise a network or a machine. So this one here disables storing passwords in memory to prevent Mimikatz, if you know what Mimikatz is. I'll show you later on in a demo. And I'm not going to go into details here, but I'm going to show you the firewall settings in a moment. So the firewall by default allows any binary on the machine to do external connections. And this script prevents a lot of, it prevents calculator from doing network connections. That's just for fun. But many of the applications here, like cscript, for example, can be quite dangerous. So if we block cscript from making network connections, you can exploit one single machine all you want, but it will not be able to connect to the network. And we can isolate the breach. We can contain the breach within this machine only. Like regsvr32.exe, that should never speak on the network, ever. You shouldn't allow that. So ideally, your firewall should block it. Rundl32, these machines like WMIC, this should not speak to the network as well, unless it's by design and your network requires it, WScript and so on. So this is important, and I wanted to emphasize a little bit on this section of the script. And yeah, of course, you disable auto run. Of course, you have to show executables for file, and show hidden files. And I'm going to show you just a few more examples before I proceed with the demo. So something important is to harden your browsers. People browse, and they browse a lot, much more than you would be willing them to browse. And I've seen incidents of users browsing the website of their users of their children's school, and the school website was compromised, and the parent was just wanted to see the grades of their child, and they visited the website. The website served them an exploit, and that parent got compromised, and that happened inside a corporate network. And then you have a whole incident just because someone wasn't browsing malicious websites, was just opening a website of their child's school. And that's why, and here the script takes care of Adobe Reader. And yeah, so here we start hardening Edge, and we start hardening Google Chrome, because most people use Google Chrome. At the end, this script also renames a tool which hackers use to delete shallow copies. You might need shallow copies. There are other ways to use them, and it's all in the comments of the script. Now I'm still sharing my screen. You can still see my screen. You know that hackers can change icons of executable content. Like this looks like a PDF file, but it's really, it's a VBA script. It's this script over here. If you open an Excel file with the macros, and these macros, if it's malicious, then obviously the user will enable content. Don't have any doubts about that, and they will get their machine compromised. So how do we solve that? Well, we use like a hardening script, right? So so here I've just opened Mimikatz, and I'm just going to show you like what happens when the hacker compromises a machine. They will find an exploit. Even if the user doesn't have admin rights, they will find an exploit. They will elevate their privileges. There are dozens of ways to elevate your rights on a machine to become system. And you can see here that my hash is visible here, and a hacker inside a corporate network, they can just take this hash. They don't need to break it. They don't need to reverse it to a password. They can just use the hash and pass the hash across your entire network. And and later on I'll talk about domain admins, but if a domain admin has ever logged into a user's machine, their hash is forever on this machine. So if a hacker compromises the same machine, they will have access to the whole network just because they compromised one machine where the domain admin logged in months ago, and their NTOM hash is still on these machines, like a fingerprint. You touch anything you touch has your fingerprint on it, and the same about domain. But I'll talk about that in a minute. And this machine is not hardened. All right, so Mimikatz works amazingly here. And you might say, yeah, but we have an antivirus. The antivirus will catch Mimikatz. No, your antivirus will not catch Mimikatz because hiding a piece of malware takes 5 minutes, and making it undetectable to all 65 antivirus vendors on VirusTotal takes just 5 minutes. And there are services, malware as a service, services underground, on underground websites where you can buy a subscription for your malware to keep your malware undetected by all antiviruses. And so don't rely on your antivirus. Rely on hardening, because your antivirus is useless against a knowledgeable attacker. So let's run our script here, right? So I'm going to run a PowerShell. I'm going to run the script. It needs to be run from the command line. Let me get to the location of the script. So I'm going to run the hardening script, and it's going to do its thing. It takes a few minutes to go through all the settings, around 500 settings in the script. And while it's going, I'm just saying, I think I said everything I wanted to say about Mimikatz. And Mimikatz is just one hacking tool, it doesn't have to be this one. There are PowerShell versions of it. There are Python versions of it. There are all kinds of, there are MimiDogs versions of it. The flavor of an ice cream doesn't matter here, What matters is that malware will find a way to reach the machine. And if you haven't hardened the machine, malware will execute and will give access to the hacker. Yeah, so there was a question by Nikita here, how main user experience implications of hardening. Well, if you do it right, you test things, right? You choose a few test machines in your enterprise, and you tweak the script, you tweak your hardening to match your software, right? If a certain line breaks your software, you tweak the line or remove the line, and make sure that your standard image, your standard enterprise machine keeps working. Obviously, you harden the machine after installing everything, not before. So you have a hardened image, and then you can deploy hardened images, or you can deploy, through group policy, hardening settings through group policy. But essentially, what the user experience after hardening should be no different. The user just can't make mistakes. That's the user experience of a hardened machine. The user cannot, like you see, the Visual Basic script here was, if I double clicked it, it would execute. Now the Visual, it just opens in Notepad. So now this user is immune from their own mistakes, let's see. Yeah, you can harden machines with Puppet, with Ansible, with OS, OS queries for collecting data, as far as I know. But yeah, there are so many ways of hardening. I couldn't show you all the different ways to harden a machine, but showing you the script and showing you what needs to be in your hardening process was my intention. That's why I showed you the script. So now I'm gonna reboot this machine, so we could see what happens with our Mimikatz. I'm gonna stop sharing now, and I'm gonna show again my slide while the machine is rebooting. But something else while it's booting, something that I wanted to show you is uh, uh, something that you should add to the browser, and that's what I recommend adding to the browser. It's uBlock Origin, and it's a plugin for ad blocking. But besides ad blocking, this plugin blocks all kinds of malicious websites. And you have to enable them. They're not enabled by default. So you go into the options, you enable all the multi-purpose and malware domains settings, and then your browser becomes protected from all kinds of malware domains. Even if you have a web gateway on the edge of the network, but this mainly works best for smaller companies who don't have a web gateway. And Zero Patch is a small program that is free for personal use and it's cheap for enterprise use, that delivers virtual patches while a vendor is busy building a patch for a 0-day that is public. Zero Patch provides you the virtual patch, which prevents a lot of exploits. And for its price, especially for personal use, it's amazing. For enterprise, the price is still amazing, considering that it protects against 0 days, which the vendor hasn't provided a patch for, like for Adobe Office or Windows or all kinds of components and software. So yeah, try Zero Patch, try uBlock Origin, go into its settings. Now, let's talk about users with admin rights, because this is what happens in a network when you have given admin rights to a user. And trust me, I've seen executives who would fire you if you don't give them admin rights on their machine. Yeah, it's not an easy situation. And to be frank, if you can't explain the risk to your executive and they threaten to fire you if you don't give them admin rights to their machine, it's your problem. It's not their problem. It's your responsibility to be able to explain. If you can't explain, work with your team to find a way to explain that. But yeah, the first thing you should do, take away admin rights from your users. Now, the question then is the IT team a user? Yes, the IT team is a user, and you should take away the IT team's admin rights on their machines. Now, this sounds crazy. Wait for it. I'm going to explain. You, as the IT admins, you also browse the internet. You also open attachments. You also are exposed to the threat of the outside world, just as all of us are exposed to COVID. You can't touch something, you can't get infected, regardless of how smart you are. So, with that in mind, you as the IT admin, you as the security admin of your company, should not have admin rights on your machine. When you need admin rights, you do the following. You right click and run as administrator. Why? Because your hash I just showed you in my virtual machine, your hash is always on the machine. Yeah, the hardening script takes care of that. It removes some of the hashes, but still, nobody in the company should run as admin by default. In fact, you should have a policy in the group policy, you should have a setting which prevents administrative interactive logins. It should be impossible, regardless of how much you trust yourself, your teammates, your IT team, or your security team. It should be practically impossible to log in interactively as an admin and browse the internet as an admin. Because if the hacker compromises an IT team member, game over. The game is over immediately, not after 5 minutes, not after 2 weeks of trying, immediately. So this is crucial, crucial. Elevate. Sometimes in some large networks, the IT team should have one additional user or two additional users, depending on the level of complexity you would like and depending on the level of security you would like. But their main user should have no admin rights on their machine, on any machine, in fact. Now, another important thing is I've seen many networks where the domain admin can log in anywhere because they are domain admin. And guess what happens? They leave their fingerprint, their hash, their domain admin hash on every single machine that they can log into. And if those are workstations, you are in very deep trouble. Why? Well, if any of those, I've already said that several times, if any of those workstations gets compromised, the whole network gets compromised because the domain admin hashes on that machine. So workstation users, workstation admins, like your IT help desk who helps users, should only be able to log in to a user's machine. They should not be able to log into a server, domain controller, whatever. The domain admin accounts, what do you do with a domain admin account? Why would you need a domain admin account? You would only need a domain admin account to change the domain, to change the forest at that high level. You don't need domain admin permissions for anything else. You can delegate all kinds of rights to all kinds of groups and users, and you don't need to have domain admin. The number of domain admins in a 10,000 people organization should be 5. I'm going to repeat that: 5 domain admin accounts in a 10,000 organization, 10,000 user organization. At most 5, ideally less. So you should have server admins, domain admins, exchange admins, all kinds of groups, but don't touch the domain admin group. Domain admins should not be able to log into servers, only to domain controllers. Server admins log into servers only, not to domain controllers, and so on. And those rules are, like, consider them your ABCs. If you don't follow these rules, you don't have any security. I mean, you may have some security, but this is crucial. And if you have a hacker in your network, this may prevent the hacker from owning your whole network. They can jump from machine to machine only. And then yeah, I mean, if desktop admins can log in, if the IT help desk, Muhammad is asking if there is any way to reverse hardening. Yes, of course. The script that I showed you does a backup. There are backups of registry that you can make, and you can also manually go and change the settings if you have to. And you can write your own like reverse script, or you could have GPOs for hardening, and you could have GPOs for reversing the effects of the hardening. And then here, this slide is important. If the workstation admins can log in to the server admins, to the domain admins workstations, then the game is over as well. Your workstation admins should not be able to log into your IT teams, to your server admins. Have different workflows to go around that, and it takes some thinking. It takes some careful planning to organize that. It's no wonder why building a red forest domain is really, really expensive, because it may take months. It cannot be solved in a few minutes during a webinar. Right. Use local admin password solution. Labs is a Microsoft technology. It's free of charge. It's amazing for solving the same password on all workstations problem. In many organizations, the local admin, there is a local admin account that the IT team loves and keeps using, and this local admin account password, its password is known to the IT team, and the password is the same on thousands of workstations. And the hacker compromises one machine, and then they know the password to the local admin on this machine, and they can use the same password across the whole organization. Game over. This organization is toast. You can consider it ransomed, deleted, whatever. So the local admin password solution randomizes the local admin password on all machines. And then there is Web Labs, which is a product which is free for organizations of less than 100 users. So smaller organizations can use it. And if your IT team is separate from your IT infrastructure, then you can use it for your IT team only. And then you can benefit from that. So I promise to speak only about free solutions here. So Web Labs is free for less than 100 users. They're not paying me to talk about them. I just like the solution. And then you have to defend your Active Directory. Let's say your endpoint is secure, right? So you've removed the local admin rights from the user. You've hardened the machine. Now it's time to defend your Active Directory. So how do you defend your Active Directory? You don't know where the problems are in your Active Directory. Well, run Ping Castle. Ping Castle is an amazing free tool. It requires a license for some features, but the free features are a ton, and you just run it in your domain. As a regular user, it collects all the data and it will tell you exactly what to fix. And it's free of charge. It's amazing. So go and get it and run it and secure your domain, because it cannot get better than that. Like, as in free beer, this is like a whole truck of free beer for you. Um, it's a great tool. I love it. And then what about the accounts, right? So what about the users who keep choosing the password of password123, and then you make them change their password every 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and they will change their password from password123 with a capital P and a at sign for the A to 1234, 1235, 1236, and or if you make them change the password every month, they'll choose a password such as password April 123, password June 123. Users are users. They'll keep doing that unless. And I have an article on LinkedIn. If you go to my activity and my articles, you will see this article, breaking 30% of Active Directory accounts in 2 days. I think I can show it to you actually. Yeah, let me share my screen quickly. So I'm going to share my screen, and I want to show you the article because it's a useful one. So if you take the most common passwords from several password lists, so I've worked a whole night to get this list. It was on World Password Day several years ago. I wrote this article several years ago. I worked the entire night to get those most common passwords from gigabytes, many gigabytes of passwords. And then if you take those passwords and you brute force an entire domain in the following way, let's say you lock the account after 3 attempts within 5 minutes. So what does the hacker do? He takes a 500 password list and he tries two passwords for every account in your directory every 5 minutes. And within 24 hours, they will go through thousands of accounts and will try the 500 most common passwords without locking a single account. And 30%, 20 to 30% of your passwords will be easy to guess passwords, because that's what users do. How do you solve this problem? Because we want to solve the ransomware problem. We want to stop the initial infection problem. To stop the initial infection problem, one of the challenges is to prevent the initial sign-in to this machine. And the password is a crucial step to sign into a machine. So how do you solve that? Let me go back to my slides. Just a second. All right. So how do you solve that? With the password filter. A password filter, amazing technology. Once again, there are many password filters in GitHub. Some of them are, conditionally free. Some of them are 100% free. Like the one you see on this screenshot here is from a vendor which charges something for the license per user. But there are many password filters on GitHub which are free. And let me see if I can show you one of them. Let's see, I think I have it on GitHub. I have the open tab here. Let me share my screen again. So yeah, so this is one that I like. I personally like it. And it's a great password filter. What does it do? It takes a few billion passwords in the hashes of those passwords, and you keep that on your domain controller, the database of most frequently used passwords globally from many years of breaches. And if a user tries to set a password which is known to this database, it will not allow them, and they will be forced to use a good password. They'll be forced to use a passphrase because they cannot use the password of password123 anymore. Not a single user in your Active Directory will be able to choose a simple to guess password. And let's see, how much time do we have? One thing that I highly recommend you to do while on this call, go to breachaware.com. I'm not paid by any company. That's a rule of my life. I don't recommend vendors for money. That's the rule for me. But go to breachaware.com, enter your domain name, and I'm going to show you like why you need to use a password filter. Let's choose lawfirm.com, like a random company. Something happened here. I need to refresh. Okay. Lawfirm.com. Oops, 75 compromised accounts. But you can go and search for any company here, literally any company, and you'll see all the. That doesn't mean the company got hacked. That means that 75 people used the stupid password or used the password on either a stupid password or they used the password on some compromised websites. You know, all the websites that we use, in general, most of the websites that we ever used were breached. Marriott, if you ever stayed in a Marriott hotel, your passport scan, your personal details are leaked already. But many sites that you use and that your users use, which is more important, are breached. And if their passwords are in one of those sites, a hacker can just buy access on a criminal site, not this one. This is a legitimate website, but they can buy access to all your users' passwords that they've used in your organization on any of those sites, and then they will try to use this password against your company. And if you didn't clean up your passwords with unique passwords using a password filter, you have a big problem. So that's why I'm showing you this here. And you can also search for your account, like this one, John Smith at Have I Been Owned website. This one here, Have I Been PWNED, Have I Been Owned? And you know, this example account here was on 144 websites were breached, which contained this user in the database, and now the hacker can easily find 144 passwords of this guy and try them against your company. So use a password filter. It's important. That's why I'm recommending to use a password filter. Let me get back to my presentation here. And let's see how much time do we have. I'm gonna go a little bit over 1 hour. Please excuse me for that. And I hope you enjoyed the webinar so far, but I want to share more with you today. Password managers, your whole company should use a password manager, especially your IT department, especially the IT team. If you don't use a enterprise password manager, just distribute free password managers to everyone. KeePassXC is something that I recommend. It's an amazing tool. It can generate passphrases, it can generate passwords, it's user-friendly, and so on and so on, and it's free. So, you know, I promised free solutions today. Attachments you can block on your gateway, take a screenshot or, you know, whatever. Dozens of attachments you should block on your mail gateway and potentially on your web filter. Network segmentation, another security architecture element that you should have. Your network logical elements or business units or infrastructure elements should be isolated so that if there is a breach in one, you shouldn't expose all the others. If there is a breach in your workstations, there should be no connectivity between workstations and servers, because a workstation shouldn't talk to a server unless they have to. And then, you know, you can build specific network rules and monitor that. And even some servers shouldn't speak to other servers. If that server doesn't have to speak to that server, you know, don't allow them to speak, you know, build the firewall rules. So a certain server group, if it gets compromised, doesn't speak, cannot leak malware and access to the hacker to other parts of your network. So network segmentation is really important. In the resources coming with this webinar, you know, I'll give you a GitHub link with several example network segmentation diagrams, which you can use for your organization. Two-factor authentication. The amazing thing about two-factor authentication is that it's bypassable, and it's so easy to bypass. It's incredible. It's like, wow, you know, we have 2FA. No, you may have 2FA, but the hackers don't care. Remember, I'll go back to the to my favorite slide in the world. And sorry for switching like that, but I'm just learning how to use this tool here. Uh, uh, Hackers don't care if you have 2FA. They can bypass your 2FA, so they don't care. They can bypass it. So mm, you know, all it takes is a phishing page with the 2FA field. So if you rely on like digits that change every 30 seconds, the hacker will, send a phishing page to the user, and the user will enter the digits on the phishing page. So you have 2FA, who cares? If if the user has shared their username and password to a hacker through a phishing page, and it shows them, a pop-up, do you approve this sign-in on their phone? Trust me, the user will approve the sign-in on their phone if it happens at 6 a.m. in the morning and they're just sleepy and they haven't had their coffee yet. So 2FA is bypassable. Think about that. I can't give you the solutions on this webinar because I just don't have time. But think about how to protect, how do you protect yourself from bypassable 2FA? Is your 2FA bypassable? And there are things that should be in your security program. Password management, attack mitigation, all these elements. And I'm not going to read them. I hate reading from slides. The links and resources that I used during this webinar. PM me, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll send you all the links and all the resources that I just talked about, or everything. And I'll send you more than I've talked about because I simply don't have time to talk about everything that I want to share with you guys. But I'll share more with you than I shared during this webinar. Just send me a message. Are there any questions? If there are any questions, please post them on LinkedIn. I'll try to answer them. I tried to answer as much as I can while talking during this webinar, but I can't answer all the questions because then, Nikita Ramezov says 25 pounds per month. Well, some things are free for personal use. Some things are, paid for enterprise usage. Yeah, people just hit improve on Microsoft Authenticator. Think about that. Detect it, please. Think about detection of logins from other countries and things like that. Any questions, please share them here. Any questions that you don't have answered yet and that I can't answer due to time limitations, send me a message and I'll try to answer them in a personal conversation. And of course, if you want to work with me as your virtual CISO, if you don't have a CISO, or if your CISO needs help, another pair of hands, another pair of eyes, talk to me. I'd be more than happy to work with you. I'd be more than happy to secure your organization. So yeah, that's all I had to say for today. I hope you liked this webinar. Osama is asking about ransomware remediation steps. Well, I'll answer that here. Ransomware remediation steps is not what you should be looking at. You should be looking at the security breach that happened months before the ransomware. You should be looking at the fact that there are hackers in your network, and you should kick them out in a secure way. It's not easy. There are books written on incident response. Like I have a book in my behind my green screen in my library. I have a few incident response books, and I unfortunately I cannot answer that, but you should learn about incident response and digital forensics in order to kick hackers out of your network. And it's a profession, it's a job. And you should have like incident responders in your network and digital forensic experts in your network, in your team, to kick out attackers from your network. Right, that was all. I sincerely hope that you got your value and your ideas how to harden an endpoint from this presentation. I didn't have time to show you what happens with Mimikatz after the hardening, but basically Mimikatz doesn't work after my hardening script. That's all that happens with Mimikatz. It doesn't function anymore. And many other things that hackers use, like 500